Hello my amazing people, and welcome back to my channel. If you're back, if you are new, welcome to my channel. I'm Shayna, and I actually have a current event for you all today, which I'm sure most if not all of you have heard of, which is the school shooting that happened in Michigan just last week. This tragedy has many lessons and takeaways that I think are very important to talk about. So in this video, since we don't have all of the information just yet, I will talk to you about what we know so far. I'll talk to you about the victims that were killed in this shooting, and I'll kind of just have a conversation with you guys about how do we move on? Like, how do we get better? Since the school year started in August, there have been 32 school shootings in the US, which is absolutely insane when you really stop and think about almost the expectation of meeting danger when you go into a school now. And it's really sad to think about, and it's really one of those things that is almost impossible to wrap your mind around because we associate school with safety and learning and growth. I don't do current events very often on my channel, and I understand if some of you are here strictly for the story format, for me to talk about a case from open to close, but this will be quite different. There will be links in the description box below that will provide you information of how you can help the victims from this awful tragedy. There are a series of GoFundMes, there is a change.org petition, so there are resources if you would like to directly help or forward the link along to someone else who may be able to help. But without further ado, just my usual disclaimer, this is all information that I have found online and compiled into a video for educational purposes. Thank you so much for joining me today, and let's get started. So let's start by talking about Ethan Crumbley, who is the 15-year-old who carried out this awful attack. And it happened at Oxford High School in Oxford, Michigan, which is about 40 minutes outside of Detroit. Ethan was described by people to be a loner, kind of quiet. He always wore black, and he always had this sad look on his face. He was just one of those kids who kind of didn't really fit in, and who everyone kind of just thought was a little on the different side. But the shooting took place on Tuesday, November 30th, which is less than a week ago from the day that I am making this video. And basically, Ethan emerged from a school bathroom with a firearm, and he fired 30 rounds. And he didn't go in any classrooms. He did all of the shooting in the hallways. It appeared that there was absolutely no rhyme or reason to the attack itself. He didn't specifically target anyone in the school, but it did result in 4 students dead, 6 students injured, and 1 teacher injured. Police arrived on the scene about 5 minutes after the beginning of the attack, where they detained Ethan Crumbley, and he was taken into custody right away. He was arrested immediately. So that's the shooter. I really want to take time before I talk about the actual facts of the case to let you know who the victims were. There were 4 students who were in school looking forward to their futures, who just had it snatched away, just taken right from beneath them. And I want to take a moment, give you just a little bit of information about the 4 of the students who lost their lives, and tell you how you can help their families in the wake of this awful tragedy. Madison Baldwin was a 17-year-old senior who was looking forward to her future. She was a smart and beautiful girl. She had several full scholarship acceptance letters from different colleges. I mean, she had an incredible future ahead of her that was just waiting for her. She came from a loving family, and she was especially close to her grandmother, who she called her Gigi. And unfortunately, she did lose her life in the shooting. Her grandmother has set up a GoFundMe for her, specifically for her. There's a GoFundMe that is for basically all of the victims, including those who passed and those who were injured. But her grandmother does have one specifically for her, which will be linked in the description box below. This is to help the family with all arrangements in dealing with the aftermath of losing their daughter. Tate Meir was a 16-year-old star athlete who made the varsity football team during his freshman year. This kid was talented. He was dedicated to a sport, and he was so loved by his fellow students. He was one of those kids that fit in with everybody. He talked to everybody. He was considered to be genuine and kind, and he actually passed away in an attempt to disarm Ethan Crumbley during the shooting. He was the brave soul who put his life on the line and ultimately lost it in an effort to protect other students. And obviously he's not here for us to tell him how he may have helped, but that act of bravery will let him go down in history as being someone who was a hero. And we don't know, in that moment or in those few seconds where he did get in the way, he could have saved someone else. He probably did save someone else or give students an opportunity to flee to safety. So Tate Muir, like I told you, since he was an athlete, there are people petitioning to get the school stadium named after him. It's a change.org petition. It currently has 250,000 signatures. I will link it down below if you guys want to go sign it. I understand that making monetary donations is not realistic for everyone, so that just gives you a way that you can help if you want to contribute, but not necessarily through money. The third victim was a girl named Hannah St. Juliana, who was a 14-year-old student, so young, oh my goodness. She had a really silly and lighthearted personality. She was a talented athlete as well. She was on the girls' basketball team, and she was loved by all of her friends, especially her teammates on the basketball team. She does have a GoFundMe as well. It looks like it was just created yesterday. I was looking, there's 2 with her name on it, but there's one that's specifically designated to be by the family. So I will link that down below for you guys as well. She currently has the least amount of donations, but I think that that's in part because it was just created yesterday. But that will be in the description box below. And last but certainly not least, the 4th student who lost his life in the shooting was a boy named Justin-Shilling, who was 17 years old. He was a scholar. He was a proud captain on his bowling team, and he was really hardworking, you guys. He had 3 jobs, and he was dedicated to his studies. Like I said, scholar is an understatement for him. He was a very impressive student, and all of the adults always kind of admired his work ethic because he was impressive in how committed he was to his studies and how hard he worked at his job outside of school. And he also had a very incredibly bright future for himself. His family says that losing him is a gaping hole that they just can't even wrap their minds around right now. It's just so devastating. I'm sure all of the families feel that way. But there is a GoFundMe for him as well. That is to help the family with his funeral expenses, and that will be in the description box below if you guys want to donate or share to anyone who may be able to donate. I know that there was a funeral that took place yesterday. I'm not sure when the rest of the funerals are scheduled for, but nonetheless, you know, even if you can't directly help, again, it's just a good idea to get the word out there because there's so just the cost of a burial, a funeral, and all of the proceedings that go with laying someone to rest is unfathomable. It actually doesn't make sense how expensive it is just to pass on, but that's a conversation for another day. All of that information will be in the box for you guys below. And now that I've told you about the people who have lost their lives, there is quite a bit to unpack about the lead up to what happened, about the background of the people involved in what happened, and now I want to move on to giving you an idea of what happened in the days before the shooting. A lot of people are especially troubled right now because there was correspondence between Ethan and the school administration about his concerning behavior before the actual shooting took place. So people are just quite bothered by the lack of follow-up and the lack of notifying authorities about his concerning behavior before this actually happened. So on the 29th of November, the day before the shooting, a teacher saw that Ethan was searching for ammunition on his phone, and they were alarmed by this. They notified the office of the school, and Ethan was pulled down and spoken to about this. Now, the parents weren't physically there for this meeting. The school did attempt to reach them. They sent them an email and they left them a voicemail, but neither of the parents got back to the school. However, we know that the parents got the messages from the school because on that day, it was later discovered by police that Ethan's mother, Jennifer Crumbly, sent him a text message saying, "LOL, I'm not mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught," end quote. And that was basically in response to him being pulled down to the office. So the mother was aware that there was something going on with her son. Again, this was the day before the shooting. On the actual day of the shooting, November 30th, a teacher saw him drawing, and the teacher saw that what he was drawing was quite alarming. It wasn't smiley faces and flowers. He actually drew a picture of a handgun and words that said, "The thoughts won't stop, help me," blood everywhere, and there were a couple other notes that he had written down that were quite concerning. In addition to the 4 notes that he had written down, there was an illustration of what appeared to be a person bleeding from 2 gunshot wounds, and underneath it, Ethan drew a laughing emoji as well. So very sinister, very concerning, alarming for this teacher. The teacher actually took a picture of the doodles on their phone, went down to the office, and this teacher basically told the office, like, you need to look into this ASAP, like, stat. And the office called in Ethan's parents at that point. They actually came down to the school. This is in the morning on November 30th. And the school told them, "This is our second incident. We tried to tell you yesterday something was up. Now today we're especially concerned. You as the parents are now required to have him enrolled in counseling within 48 hours for him to remain in school. And we urge you to take him from school with you today, just to make sure that there's no safety concerns for his fellow students." And they showed the parents the note. The parents saw what he had drawn, and when the parents actually got there, he tried to scribble out the note. I don't know why the note wasn't confiscated, but he tried to basically cover up what he had drawn. But they were shown the picture that the teacher took on the phone. So the parents knew that something wasn't quite right with their son, but instead of taking him from school and figuring out what he needed to heal, they let him stay at school. And this was the same exact day that the attack took place at 12:50 p.m. that afternoon. And it's sinister because the whole time that they were in this meeting with the school, he had the firearm in his backpack. And the parents knew that he had a firearm, and I'll get into that, but he had the firearm in his backpack the entire time. And the worst part about all of this is that it could have been avoided. The parents could have taken him home, or the school could have notified police. As far as who's to blame here, I think that there's a lot to spread. So his shooting started at 12:50. The parents of Ethan, Jennifer and James is his father, they got word about the shooting, and Jennifer texted Ethan at 1:22 p.m. saying, "Ethan, don't do it." So clearly she knew following this meeting that he then went ahead and went on with the shooting, because she texted him, "Don't do it." And then after this, still within the 1 o'clock hour, James Crumbly called police and let them know that a firearm that they owned was missing from the house, and that they believed that their son was the shooter. And this gun that was missing from the house was a recent purchase of Ethan's father. He actually purchased it on November 26th, so just 4 days before. But neither of the parents took the initiative to go in his bag to look, just to make sure. Apparently his dad owned multiple firearms. So they knew that there was a possibility that Ethan could have had one, because they actually purchased this gun for him. Yes, you are not hearing me incorrectly. The gun that Ethan used to plan and to execute this attack was a gift from Ethan's parents to Ethan as an early Christmas gift. And we know this because there were 2 Instagram posts to corroborate this. The first post was by Ethan himself. He posted this photograph, and the quote says, "Just got my new beauty today." Pictured is a 9mm handgun. And the second post was by his mother, which is pictured here. Jennifer Crumbly posted this. It is the exact same gun with the quote, "Mom and Son Day, testing out his new Christmas present." So this wasn't something that was purchased by the parents, held by the parents, and stolen by Ethan. This was purchased in James' name, registered to James. He led whoever sold him this firearm to believe that this was for him, and then it was taken and gifted to Ethan. So Ethan had free reign with this firearm. It was literally set up for him to carry out this attack. He was given the tools to do such an awful thing. He didn't have to go and jump through hoops to do this. And I'd imagine that when James heard about the actual shooting taking place, he was going to try to say that Ethan just took the firearm from the house and that it was his gun, because both of the Instagram pages have been deactivated. So clearly when this all happened, Jennifer and James were like, okay, delete the post, because I'm just going to say it was my gun, because obviously they're going to get in even more trouble when it comes to everyone's attention that he purchased this firearm for a 15-year-old. Not for hunting purposes, not for anything sports related, if you even want to say that, but just for the sake of giving a 15-year-old a gun. Now, Ethan was immediately taken into custody right away, and then the very next day he was charged. 24 charges in total, including 4 of them being first-degree murder charges, which he pled not guilty to everything, which is absolutely insane to me. He is being charged as an adult, and the defense was trying to get him to stay in this juvenile holding facility kind of place that he initially was taken to, but the prosecutors were like, absolutely not. He needs to be held in an actual prison. We're charging him as an adult. The crime that he committed obviously is proof that he poses a risk to other people, especially children. So they moved and they pushed to get him into an adult facility, which they were successful. So he is being held in an adult prison right now. He's in his own like section off quarters, only to have correspondence with the prison staff and his legal counsel, but he is being held in a big boy prison, as he should be. And after Ethan was taken into custody, police went and searched the home, and they did find a journal where he was talking about how he wanted to shoot students. And they also found videos on his phone of him talking about it. So this was just very clearly premeditated. And I understand that parents usually are not responsible and usually aren't held to any standard in these situations because either they didn't know or it was just totally out of their control. But the parents' involvement in this is so egregious and just alarming, I want to say, because they literally supplied him with the weapon of mass destruction. Like, they literally gave him the tool that he needed to carry out this awful thing. And it just makes you think, because if the students and the people around him at the school were concerned and noticed that something wasn't quite right with him, how can it be remotely possible for the parents to not have known that their son was troubled, that their son was dealing with something? So as police found all of the evidence, the Instagram posts, the text messages exchanged, they did also file charges against James and Jennifer Crumbley. They have 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter each against them. And when the parents got word that they had to attend a hearing to face these charges, they actually went on the run. They had very clear instructions. They needed to report that they needed to be somewhere by a specific time. They did get a lawyer to represent the both of them. But when they were contacted, they told their lawyer, look, we can't get there right now. We're scared. We aren't in town. So, we can't report right now. So essentially they went on the run. Right, but the police were able to track them down pretty quick. They actually tracked them down by an ATM transaction, which showed that they were in Detroit. So they weren't on a trip. They weren't on vacation. They were 40 minutes from Oxford. They were right in the area. And the police received a tip that their vehicle was spotted in Detroit. When police came out to see if they could find them anywhere, they were found in a building, first floor of a building, locked inside of a room. So they weren't unable to report. They just didn't report. And they very clearly were planning to run. Needless to say, the events that took place last week have absolutely shaken the community of Oxford. Something like this is traumatic for the families who lost their children, of course, right? But it's also traumatic for the students who witnessed this, who heard this happening, or who even heard about this happening. Can you imagine going back to a school where something like this has taken place? Can you imagine how difficult it is to reestablish a feeling of safety in a place like this? To most kids, school is where you are safest, right? You're surrounded by adults. You probably have armed guards on site. I know I did when I was in high school. Actually, there was an armed guard in the school. There's preventative measures. You're taught different drills. You're taught what to do when there's an active shooter, to hide. You're taught what to do when there's an earthquake, right? There's things that are in place that make you feel safe. To have that sense of security taken away and just shook all up is devastating to someone who is still in their adolescence. That is going to impact them long term, even when they're long out of school, just as they move throughout life. And having lost a sense of trust in humanity, That's awful to think about. There was a student who did an interview with Anderson Cooper, and he talked about the students hiding in classrooms. He talked about them, you guys, this is so sad. He talked about them holding calculators and staplers and scissors and just waiting for the shooter to come in, and how they were going to try to defend themselves with calculators and staplers and books. He talked about how they were so afraid that they were going to be next that they sent text messages to their families telling them that they loved them because they didn't know if they were going to make it home that day. I can't wrap my mind around the statistic that there's been 32 school shootings since August in the United States alone. Sadly, most of these I haven't even heard about because it's almost commonplace, which is absolutely terrifying. I mean, I'm someone who is constantly looking at current events and trying to figure out what's going on in the world, and I haven't heard about this. Have you guys heard about this? I don't know. But there is another statistic: over 70% of violent crimes are carried out through the use of firearms. Through the use of firearms. So the simple fact of the matter is that most crimes that are ending in people being killed are being carried out with guns. Just the firearm landing in his hand, the hand of this troubled teenager, is quite scary. And you guys can give me your thoughts on gun laws in the United States. It's a very heated topic. I don't get into politics on this channel, and honestly, I don't know that I have a fully formed opinion to the point where I would feel comfortable giving my thoughts on it. But what I can comment on and what I can clearly say is that there is something that needs to change in some capacity, right? I'm not necessarily saying that you shouldn't be able to own a firearm. I don't necessarily take that stance, but how is it possible that these guns are getting into the hands of people who are a threat to society? I mean, how do we change that? What do we do? And I don't have all the answers. I don't have any answers. I think that being able to defend yourself with a weapon is within your right. But how do we mitigate the issue of the boundary between people who want to have firearms for their own personal safety and people who want to have firearms so they can do awful things to helpless people? How do we fix that? How do we eliminate the risk? How do we at least reduce the risk of this continuing to happen? Schools should be a place where children can go. It shouldn't be a war zone. It shouldn't be a place where kids have to worry and look over their shoulder now, because I guarantee you students not only in Oxford but also other places in the world are now concerned that when they go to school they are not safe. I remember being in high school, nothing really ever happened at my school, but I remember having that thought, like, what if something were to happen? Or when a couple other mass shootings have happened over the years, like, I didn't want to go to the movies at one point because it just was, I didn't like the idea of being in a group of people or whatever the case was, right? Because you just never know, and it's absolutely terrifying. So again, I encourage a dialogue. I encourage a conversation. I encourage an unpopular opinion. Even if you have an opinion on this, it would be useful to me to hear people's insight on this, because I don't know, man. I just know that something has to change, and something has to change fast. But please do not forget to check out the links in the description box below, where you will find resources of how you can help. There are a few links down there. This is an awful tragedy, you guys. I don't have to reiterate that. I think we all can fully understand it, and there are still developments coming out about this, but I wanted to let you guys know, pay homage to the people who lost their lives and give you an idea of what actually happened here, because there's a lot of conflicting reporting that's happening, and this is what happened. I watched the actual arraignments, so I am trying to stay as factually correct as I possibly can. Of course, things can always kind of get misconstrued as you are reading different things, but yeah, so that's where we are. You guys. Absolutely awful. I mean, I send my sincerest condolences to the families of those that had their lives taken. I keep the students in my thoughts that go to this school, that lost their friends, that had their friends got hurt. I mean, I don't want to diminish the people who were also just injured and traumatized from that in this shooting. Again, 6 students injured, 1 teacher injured. So there's a large impact. It's not just an impact on the people who lost their lives. Obviously that's the largest, but the implications of this expand far and wide, and for a long time after this actual event, and all of this will be handled legally. The long-term impact of this will be significant. So I just keep everybody in my thoughts, and just absolutely awful, you guys. Absolutely awful. But yeah, I think that's all that I got for you guys today. It just makes me sad, you know? It makes me sad. Like, 15 years old, and has now put himself in a situation where he has done irreparable damage to his own life, and especially to the lives of all of those people in that school that day. It's just, and in his mugshot, I don't want to say it looks like he's smiling, but he has this smug look on his face, like he could care less. This satisfaction behind his eyes. Look at this photograph. Am I the only person that sees that? It's all my opinion, of course. It's all, you know, just, I usually can wrap up a video very smoothly and eloquently, but I've kind of like lost the words. But without further ado, thank you so much for joining me today. You know what I'm going to say. If you made it this far, you are loyal. You really are. And I appreciate you. Hope you have a wonderful morning or afternoon or evening, depending on what time it is when you watch this video. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Say bye, Wiggles.